see on the Palisades incident. We're going to need an evacuation order all the way to PCH.
We're going to issue that evacuation notice now.
Malibu, California has some of the most sought-after real estate in the entire country. Imagine living here, these incredible views on the Pacific, sunset every single night. It's a dream for thousands of people. And yet, on the night of January 7, 2025, it became a nightmare for so many, with communities reduced to rubble. At 10:30 a.m. on January 7th, a fire broke out in the mountains north of Pacific Palisades. Within 3 hours, it increased 40-fold in size. Fire officials descended on Los Angeles County. Residents fled. By nightfall, it was burning into neighborhoods. Hurricane-force winds fanned the flames. At 6:18 p.m., a new inferno would develop near Altadena. Los Angeles County was on fire.
We were right there in it. It was definitely a chaotic situation.
Meet Michael Steinberg. He's a fire and storm chaser. He was in the Palisades as disaster struck.
We had to actually help a elderly woman who I actually noticed through the smoke because she had a flashlight and she had a garden hose, and she was just so disoriented from the whole situation. She was so confused.
That night, the fire burned all the way to the beaches of Malibu and Santa Monica. That's where we met Chris Hansen, a retired Los Angeles fire captain.
I don't know, 8 p.m., the fire kind of came off the hill, started throwing a lot of ember wash, basically raining, what looks like just sparks, heavy pieces of, flying embers that anywhere that hit a receptive fuel bed, it would catch fire.
Hansen invited us into his home to show us why it survived.
That deck caught fire. That deck caught fire. But we were able, it's pretty defensible.
He told us he intentionally cleared vegetation from around his house ahead of time. That way the fire could have a barrier.
Said we were very lucky. As I said, we're very defensible where we're standing.
He showed us gripping video he captured as the fire burned towards his home. Was there any point at which you were nervous?
Me, no. No, I'm experienced. I've seen some, devastation before. The visibility, in my opinion, was pretty good. So I could still see 5-6 structures out. And like I said, I'm not gonna, put myself or my family in harm's way.
I made my way into the Palisades on January 13th. Sunset Boulevard was empty. Honestly, I didn't really know what to expect. Everything looked normal until it suddenly didn't. So it's about 4 p.m. on January 13th. We just got here, and it's funny, you look around, it's a beautiful place. The birds are chirping. It looks like, high-end, nice community. You can just barely smell like a little bit of a campfire, campy smell. You would never know anything was wrong. Everywhere I looked, there were signs of everyday life quickly abandoned. Holiday decorations, rubbish awaiting trash pickup, half a melted trash can. Or right here, this cement block that says Happy Birthday Lindsay, dating back to 1984. It's been here for about 40 years. And now there's nothing else around. Uncapped fire hydrants dripped like a morbid metronome. The fire's caprice is evident pretty much everywhere you look. Look at this house, for example, perfectly fine. The trash can in the front looks fine on one side, but if we bend down, this side is completely melted. And look what happened to the house next door. All that's left standing is the stone foundation. The rest has burnt away. Then I entered Ground Zero. I found a community cremated, the bones of chimneys and vehicles standing out in a chalky gray. Otherwise, it was just ash. I found stairs leading to nowhere. I encountered a stuffed animal hanging from the mirror in a burnt car. It was a neighborhood left behind at a moment's notice. This home here on Olive Street was destroyed, and yet the lemon tree out front survived fine. The lemons are still perfectly good, and in fact, they even have juice in them. Oh, right here, these oranges, fine. And yet the house behind them, nothing left. Truth be told, it was very eerie, like wandering through a smoky cemetery. Crews were searching the ruins for remains of possible victims. Charred vehicles offered special insight into just how hot the fire was. You see what appears to be melted aluminum. Aluminum melts at 1,221 degrees Fahrenheit. The fires probably burned hotter than 1,500 degrees. We found a Tesla Model Y, which you can see the back left and right's bowed out from where the chassis actually began to melt. Aluminum from the wheels, and then on the side, the doors have melted off too. So has the steering column. I wondered the story behind each vehicle. Did the homeowners make it out in time? I don't think I realized the true scale of the disaster until darkness fell. No sounds, no lights anywhere. Just the dusty flicker of ash in the headlights.
Most of your fuel type that's burning in this fire is, combustible materials, houses, all the toxic waste that's in that.
With darkness encroaching, it was time to call it a night. Disasters have a beginning, but they don't necessarily have an end. For fire victims, January 7th marked the start of months or years of recovery. The price tag for all this structural damage? Some $40 billion, making this the most expensive wildfire outbreak in California state history. And that doesn't even begin to take into account the human impact. 100,000 people evacuated and displaced, hotel rooms and lost productivity, ruined infrastructure. But the true economic toll could approach $250 billion, more than the cost of Hurricane Katrina. But there's also a science to mitigating this loss. It starts with what residents plant around their homes.
People might think, oh, it's ornamental, it's in my yard. It's wet, I can wet it down. But a lot of the homes that started igniting in that area started because of that ornamental vegetation.
Fortunately, as 30 years go by, the pine trees, the eucalyptus trees, the privacy hedges with their ficus end up just creeping up, and next thing you have 30-foot hedges.
That vegetation exploded in growth during the winters of 2022 and 2023. Twice as much rain as normal fell. But all those plants have since dried up. It hasn't rained in more than 8 months. It's also not just what we plant, it's literally how we build our homes.
You got to think about if an ember brand is flying in the air and it lands on your property, whether it's your, eaves, your wood sidings, your wood piles, your furniture, is that going to start something at your house?
Take me through the significance of 750 Elif Street, because seeing one structure remaining and then nothing nearby, I was sort of taken aback when I saw that.
So that home at that address is, a perfectly built, fire-hardened home. There are no exposed eaves. There are no gutters, or if there were gutters, they were all closed. The vent systems were closed. They had triple pane windows, so those would not crack in high intensity heat like other windows would. And another small thing too with the home is that if he's looking through those windows of the photos that you took, there aren't any curtains near the windows. So radiant heat, it could actually ignite those curtains inside, and then that's how you would get a fire inside the home as well too.
Steinberg says that setting vegetation back by as little as 2 to 5 feet away from a home can make all the difference. Beyond how we construct our homes, it also comes down to how we structure our neighborhoods. We cram neighborhoods to the brim with houses basically on top of each other. We make it easy for the flames to hop building to building to building.
A lot of our issues right now too, especially in Southern California, is unfortunately we've kind of built our way into these problems.
A fire will burn until it finds a lack of fuel, and so often we could halt a fire by having big stretches of emptiness, like the size of a football field, but we don't do that. Instead, we build straight in something called the wildland-urban interface, the transition zone from forest to neighborhood. California has 5.1 million homes constructed there. That means there's nothing to stop a forest fire from marching right into town and becoming a neighborhood fire. Now planners have the opportunity to build back better.
Hindsight is 2020, but why would we really want to build in an area that's in a box canyon with one way in, one way out, heavy vegetation all in that area, in an area that we know that naturally burns between either 5 years or even 100 years. But fire is a natural cycle in this area.
And as precipitation patterns change, that risk will only increase.
It truly is becoming a year-round threat in California. It's been a long time coming. We've gone through so many disasters here in California with fire, but, maybe enough is enough, and we will truly become resilient in the future.
And until Southern California gets meaningful rain, there's nothing to stop disaster from striking again. You know, a little while ago we came down here to see the sunset and we saw dozens of dolphins cresting out of the water. You have to look for those everyday beautiful moments. And just as nature endures, people do too. Malibu won't be back tomorrow, the Palisades won't be back tomorrow, but someday, Southern California will look the exact same, if not better. People will always endure.
Follow MyRadar on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Download MyRadar on iOS, Android, Amazon Alexa, and Windows.